This is The Secrets of Soulitude with Ruby D, the goddess entrepreneur and the soul speaker. I look forward to you listening and me sharing my story. Peace. Peace and love. Welcome to the third episode of Secrets of Soulitude with myself, Ruby D, the goddess entrepreneur and soul speaker. And today's topic is called the relationship. Yes, the relationship. And I'll just go ahead and spill the beans. No, it's not about a relationship that I had with somebody. The most important relationship that I've ever had or will ever have is the one that I have with myself. And I found out a long time ago that me putting myself first is or was key to me getting to the point where I am now. It was key when it came to me working a job. It was key when it came to me attending college. It was key when it came to personal relationships. It was key to professional relationships. It was key to everything. And one of the first lessons that I learned within that particular lesson is that I had to allow myself to feel. I'm a Scorpio, which I've probably mentioned before, but with being a Scorpio, we are very emotional. I'm a woman. I'm very emotional. So being a Scorpio woman makes me emotional. And I remember one particular relationship where that was a huge problem. And I held myself accountable a long time ago for how I allowed that to affect the relationship that I was in at the time or the relationship that I wanted. And was like, well, hey, if I'm going to be emotional, then I might as well embrace it and love myself for it. Just because somebody else couldn't handle it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean that it's a negative thing. And so with learning how to effectively manage my feelings became important. One of the first things to effectively managing my feelings and emotions was really being honest with myself about how I felt about things. If I wasn't happy about it, then it was like, why are you not happy? Or what does this particular thing trigger in you that makes you unhappy or affects you the way that it does? And the more I started to learn how to effectively manage my feelings and emotions, then that process spilled over into other areas of my life. So it's just like, of course, during this time I was working a full-time job. And it's like, okay, why don't you like working this full-time job and how does this make you feel? Of course, I knew early on, like I've mentioned before, that I wanted to have my own business. And that having a job was just serving its purpose at that particular time, of course, because I had to pay bills. And so even while working, that's when I started my first business, which was Fashion Forte. But with understanding what about that job triggered me or made me feel a certain way, and it's like, okay, now that I know what triggers me and why it triggers me, what can I do to fix this? Or what do I need to do to fix this? And at the moment or at that particular time, I couldn't necessarily just up and quit my job. But it was just, I knew I wasn't into the chakras at this particular time. This is like maybe, it's before Katrina, so between mid-2003 and mid-2005, within that 2-year period, because I graduated from Tougaloo May 2003, and then Katrina happened August 2005. So it was within that time period, that this transition was taking place. But I knew that I had to do something about it, and starting the business, I knew that if I had to go to work and work so many hours, then I had to spend so much time creating. I've always been a creator, a mental creative. And so, of course, like I said, during that time, I started Fashion Forte. Fashion Forte was my company where I was a model, I was a runway coach, I worked with other models, I worked behind the scenes with photographers, I did a little bit of makeup, I did a little bit of styling, working with other professionals within the fashion industry, back home in Mississippi, along the coast, Jackson, Mississippi, a little bit in Memphis, a little bit in Alabama, basically around that particular area because that's where I was. But I knew that even though I had to go to work and deal with what I just truly disliked, the good part was, okay, after I work, then I can go home and focus on what I really enjoy doing. And so, that worked for a while because I was using the negative feelings that I was getting from working and creating something that I loved. So, again, being able to effectively manage turning those negative feelings into positive feelings was something that I knew early on that I needed to do, but I didn't know what it was. I really didn't think this has to be something. What is this? I was just doing it. Chakras didn't come along until about 7, 8, maybe 9 years later. But anyway, at that time, I also realized that the person that I was wanting didn't want me back. And yeah, it was a bummer. I ain't like it. But I was just like, what? I can't get mad at that. I was grateful for them being honest about it. And yeah, it hurt my feelings, but it's not like this person was lying to me. It's not like this person was leading me on. It was just, a tough situation that I had to learn from. Eventually, with that situation, it, fizzled on out. And I had to do what was best for me. And usually when I get in situations where I have to do what's best for me, I look at it as like, I don't want to say a life or death situation, but more or less like it's a me versus them situation. And I can't lose. I refuse to lose. I can't lose. I can't allow myself to lose. And that's because if I allow myself to lose and it's just in my head, me versus them, then I'm pretty much putting them before me. I want to say that one more time. And it may sound crazy, but I don't care. It's always worked for me up until this point, so that's what I'm going to continue to do. But in my head, I have to create a situation where it's me versus them. My needs versus their needs. My happiness versus their happiness. My growth versus their growth. And it's just like, I always have to make sure my needs are met first. My growth is more important than the next person. Make sure that I'm always first for me. And in this me versus them thing in my head, I have to always win. I have to always come on top, because if I don't win, then I am saying to myself, they are more important than you. And in my head, that just wasn't gonna happen. It's just like I owe it to myself to do everything that I can for me. I owe it to myself to make sure I'm taken care of. Because honestly and truly, at the end of the day, does this person really care about you, and are they really putting you first? Are they really making you a priority in their life? And then if it's no, it's just no. It's just like we have to, I learned to stop putting people before me and putting their priorities before mine, because I know if it came down to it, then they would do the same thing for themselves. And pretty much during that time, I got to the point where I was pretty much fighting me for me. No, it sounds kind of crazy, but again, I don't care. So it was like, okay, which me do I allow to win? The me, this is after I have the me versus them, whole conversation thing. But at this particular point in time, it's just like, in order for me to make the biggest impact that I can, I have to make sure I am the best version of me, so that when other people need me, or when I have to show up in the life of someone else, then I'm showing up as the best version of me. Not somebody that's damaged, not somebody that isn't happy, not somebody that doesn't feel, not somebody that doesn't care about themselves enough to truly care about other people. And so, during that time, I was just making sure that Ruby was happy, making sure that Ruby was taken care of, and making sure that Ruby didn't allow herself to be taken advantage of by other people. I still met people, and I still, hung out and dated and stuff like that. But I just always made sure at some point, when I came to the crossroad of having to make a decision, whether to continue on with this person or go in a separate direction, which would have been best for me, I always made sure to go in that separate direction. With doing this over the years and time again in different situations, relationships, friendships, connections with family members, professional relationships, not even just personal, then I became better at it. It became easier for me to do. It became easier for me to choose me and to always put myself first. And, I'm fortunate to have learned how important the relationship that I have with myself is, and how it affects me, not only personally but professionally, because I've put myself first so many times. I've been able to experience a lot of life. And when I say life, I mean good parts of life. Yeah, I have bad pieces and bad parts of life that happen, but I've had way more good than bad. There have been many situations that could have went left real quick. But because I put myself first, I prevented it. Yeah, now that I think about it, that's a whole nother story. I have to tell you all. I will tell you all about that. But because I learned that lesson early on, it has helped me personally as well as professionally. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. No, it took some time. It took, a few years for me to get good at it. But again, the more I did it, the easier it became. The easier it became for me to recognize situations where I wasn't priority in somebody's life, and I had to show up for myself and say, hey, Ruth, look, this particular relationship is not benefiting you at, in any way. So what are you going to do? It's you versus them. So you know the routine. Let's go ahead and do this so we can do what we got to do. And it just became easier. Like right now, and where I am in life, it is so easy to do that. Not only personally, but professionally. And that's one of the reasons why I created the Goddess Grind book series, because it was one of those moments where I had to either choose me or I had to choose them. And of course I chose me. Had I not chose me, I maybe would have written the first and second book of the Goddess Grind series, but that was it. I wouldn't have the third and fourth books. I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't have come up with this particular episode. There would be no Soul Therapy series. There would be no Secrets of Soulitude podcast or Soul Sunday or Soul Therapy Radio. It would be none of that. And so, because I've continuously chose me, then that reinforced the idea in my mind that I am powerful, that I love me unconditionally, that I put myself first, that I am familiar with and I know my intuition. I know who I am. I know what I truly desire, because I don't make decisions on the fly. I make decisions that are for me. I make decisions that feel good, and I pay attention. The relationship that I have with myself, it goes far beyond just being able to follow my intuition and listen and pay attention to things around me. The relationship that I have has to be nurtured. It has to, just like, with any other relationship that you have with any other person. You can't say, me and this man are in a relationship and that's it. It takes work. It takes dedication. It takes honesty. It takes trust. It takes, being accountable. Same thing with the relationship that I have with myself. I can't just say I have a relationship with myself and that be it. No, I have to nurture that relationship. I have to be honest with myself. I have to, make sure I'm okay. I have to learn to trust myself. I have to learn to listen to myself. I have to learn how to effectively communicate with myself. And as I do those things, the relationship that I have with myself becomes stronger. That's the same thing that you have to do. And if you don't, you reinforce the idea that you are not even good enough for yourself. And for me, that just ain't true. That is just not true. So, I hope you've enjoyed this particular episode of The Secrets of Soulitude. I will see you next time. Thank you all for tuning in. Peace. We thank you for tuning in to the Soul Therapy series. Be sure you check us out online at www.soultherapyradio.life and join our email list. This is Ruby D, the Soul Speaker. Peace.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.